Jerry Jarrett, the famed wrestling promoter, in-ring performer, and father of WWE Hall of Famer Jeff Jarrett, had a sign hanging in his office that said, "Personal issues draw money." And that couldn't be more true than one of the most controversial storylines in WWE history. When Matt Hardy kickstarted his feud with Edge in 2005, it wasn't any normal storyline. It was based on a very real issue that rocked the wrestling world and turned Edge and Lita into two of the most hated figures in all of pro wrestling. This is Sportskeeda Wrestling. I'm Kevin. What did you think of this wild story? Let us know in the comments below. So what exactly happened in this controversial situation involving Matt Hardy, Lita, and Edge? What happened was inspired by real life things and played out into a very crazy storyline, blurring the lines between fiction and reality. We have to go back 25 years to 1999. Oh boy, that makes me feel old. Matt Hardy and Edge began wrestling on the main roster in 1998. Lita would join the WWE after a short but successful run with Extreme Championship Wrestling. She would make her unfortunate debut on Monday Night Raw in an appearance with Godfather's Ho Train, but she really got going when she was the valet for S.A. Rios, appearing regularly on episodes of Sunday Night Heat. Although Matt Hardy and Lita met on the independent circuit in the 90s, they only began dating when they were both in WWE, eventually joining forces together on screen in the Hardy Boys formation of Team Extreme. They bonded and fell in love, chasing their wrestling dream together and being a part of the iconic Attitude Era in a big way. It wasn't until they sat down later that they could really reflect on what happened. By all accounts, it seemed to be a good relationship with little to no arguments between them, while they went through a life on the road in the biggest pro wrestling company in the world. Edge and Christian became fast friends with the Hardy Boys as they were having those phenomenal tables, ladders, and chairs matches, meaning Edge and Matt had a close friendship. Remember that weird storyline where Kane was pursuing Lita and forced her to marry him? A little before that, she was out of action with an injury where she finally got the chance to take a break from the insane, very demanding WWE schedule and introspect on her life and relationship with Matt Hardy. It was during this time that she seemed to discover she couldn't see herself having a relationship with Matt Hardy that went beyond the pro wrestling business, and maybe the circumstances are simply the thing that brought them together and maybe kept them together. Appearing on Lillian Garcia's Making Their Way to the Ring podcast, Lita shared her mindset at the time, saying that there wasn't necessarily huge issues between her and Matt, but that there was just a circumstantial disconnection. And that's when other things started. Somewhat around this time, Matt Hardy would be written off television when he was injured by Kane and spent nearly a year on the shelf. And this is when everything unraveled and he found out his world was changing. Edge, who was in his second marriage, began traveling with Lita on the road and staying in the same room. With Hardy's absence and increasing doubts over the future of their relationship, Lita found a shoulder to cry on in Edge, who was also a good friend of hers. We all know what happens next. Edge's wife at the time expressed her concerns about the burgeoning bond between Edge and Lita while they were on the road. Matt Hardy, around Valentine's Day, felt it was getting to him and eventually looked at Lita's phone while she was asleep and listened to voicemails that were quite revealing. Reportedly around this time, Lita left Matt's home to her mother's home in Atlanta, Georgia. Matt Hardy then reached out to Edge, and some tense, not so nice words were reportedly also exchanged. The online conversation around all of this played out with the wrestling public not knowing the full story just yet, as Matt Hardy removed all pictures of Lita from his website. Hardy continued to vaguely instigate the issue even further, asking fans to ask Lita at her upcoming appearances why her pictures weren't on the website. It was understandable to see why he felt betrayed by two people he cared about so much. But in retrospect, in the years since, some have questioned how Hardy handled the very stressful situation. But things things got even more complicated as Matt and Lita's scheduled autograph appearances together were changed in the North Carolina area. Yeah, Hardy country. As wrestling websites started to break the story on the personal issues involving all three superstars, Lita would post on her site about dealing with personal issues, asking fans to respect her privacy. Hardy would get even more revealing in another post on his website, stating that he did not want to be portrayed as a bad guy and that Adam Copeland, Edge's real name, was feces. Hardy would also express that he still cared for Lita, but certainly sustained his detest for Edge. Matt Hardy was then abruptly removed from WWE live events as he was building up towards a big return, conveniently enough, in the North Carolina area. Backstage officials fearing that there could be a real-life fight breaking out backstage. Hardy would still show up to the shows, trying to prove to the locker room that he and Edge could still coexist. And by all recollections, the fans in North Carolina were not too kind to Edge on that event. With all of these issues swirling online and Hardy trying to heal up his knee and make a big comeback to the ring, focus back on his career, he got the unfortunate "we wish you well in your future endeavors" news. Matt Hardy was released by WWE. The public outcry from WWE fans at the time was loud, and it sided heavily with Matt Hardy, who they felt was wronged for getting fired in this entire situation. The guy who got cheated on was the one who got let go. Think about that. When Paul Heyman uttered the words "Matt freaking Hardy" at the ECW One Night Stand show, yes, this was the one-off ECW show they did around this time, it only added fuel to the fire. Fans were talking, WWE was listening, but where was this gonna go? Edge and Lita quickly became public enemy number one in the world of pro wrestling. Edge used this opportunity, yes, the ultimate opportunist, to take his character to the next sleazy level. Yes, the beginning of the rated R superstar, maybe? While the chants of "we want Matt" and "you screwed Matt" were the perfect heat that Edge needed as the top villain climbing up the card in WWE at the time, it paled in comparison to the derogatory slurs that Lita had thrown her way from fans when she appeared on screen and she was trying to portray a babyface. Matt Hardy was hotter than ever, and he wasn't even signed to WWE anymore. During the 90-day non-compete clause that we always hear about after a superstar is released, he even admitted to verbally agreeing on a very good deal with Jeff Jarrett to sign with WWE's then rival, TNA. But in the back of his mind, he knew that the best business decision was to go back to WWE. And when they offered him a chance to come back to WWE under all of these wild circumstances, he quickly jumped at the chance. Meanwhile, WWE decided to ride the wave in the right direction, turning Lita into a heel and aligning her with Edge as an on-screen couple who grossly made out, with thousands of people booing them as they did it. They even got to have one of those outlandish wrestling weddings in June with Edge and Lita on Monday Night Raw, and you know the whole part with "whoever shall hold their peace, speak now." Oh, here's Matt Hardy's music, he's back. No, it was just a troll job. Kane, though, would interrupt the wedding because it is a wrestling wedding. In July of that year, it finally happened. Edge was set to face Kane on Monday Night Raw, but before that match could happen, it was presented as a real-life situation with Matt Hardy attacking Edge on screen. He's not supposed to be there before the match even happens, and then another attack from Hardy on Edge after the match. Matt Hardy was back in WWE, and the response was insane. Somehow during this wild scene, while he's trying to be separated from Edge, Matt Hardy gets a hold of a microphone, calls Lita some not very nice things, calls Edge some very not nice things, also uses his real name, somehow plugs Ring of Honor, where he was wrestling at the time, and was removed from the arena. Even if they felt uncomfortable, Matt Hardy and Edge and Lita decided to be pros and go forward with this very, very testy story. This set the stage for a big emotional clash at SummerSlam that year. But before they could tear it up in the ring, Vince McMahon got them both in the office to stamp his authority over the entire thing. Recalling a rather one-sided conversation with Mr. McMahon, both Matt Hardy and Edge had the boss ask asked them questions like, you realize that this is my company, right? You realize that because I'm renting the arena is mine. And after both men reaffirmed that they were aware of his position of power, he told them that this is the most powerful man in the industry, and he would personally ensure that they never wrestled a day again if they decided to take liberties and go at it for real in the ring. Yeah, that is definitely a story to check out on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy, his podcast, worth a listen. But what fans didn't expect from either man was a match filled with animosity, brimming at the point of tension and rage between two foes with a serious personal issue. So intense that the match ended in minutes? This is the chaotic yet brief brawl that McMahon dictated to his superstars. And in less than 5 minutes, Edge bloodied Matt Hardy and got the first laugh in their feud. Edge and Matt Hardy would meet in a street fight on Raw just a little over a week later, and this was instantly a match that surpassed the pay-per-view battle at SummerSlam. This was one of the best WWE television matches of the year. This rivalry would reach its peak inside the unforgiving steel cage at the Unforgiven pay-per-view, with Matt Hardy ascending to the top of the cage, landing a huge flying leg drop on Edge to secure that big, long sought-after victory. A month later, at the homecoming 3-hour edition of Monday Night Raw, they had a Money in the Bank ladder match. The winner would get the briefcase, the loser would have to leave Raw. Hardy and Edge in a ladder match. This makes a lot of sense. They have all that history from the tag team years, right? Unfortunate for the faithful people behind Matt Hardy, he would be on the losing end and would have to go over to SmackDown. On the Cutting Edge segment, Edge would label himself the Rated R Superstar, a nickname that weaved in those real-life elements in the over-the-top world of pro wrestling. And if you look back at the end of the Matt Hardy, Edge, and Lita saga, he's the one who was the biggest winner coming out of this. Lita had certain things that augmented her character from the entire scenario, and she really played a supporting role to Edge throughout it, an effective one. Hardy had to go over to SmackDown and basically reinvent himself. And if you look back at the storyline, Edge having the momentum is really what kept him strong to take on this other big guy in the Ruthless Aggression era, John Cena, and also helped him become WWE champion only a few months later. Coming out of that feud, the winning man was the final step in cementing Edge as a main event star. It's a bit ironic considering his position in the entire real-life affair situation, but that's the way it played out. And hey, WWE needed to push new talent at the time, and why pull someone's momentum with all of this? As for Matt Hardy, it may have not brought him to that main event level around that time, but the story actually turned out to be a new lease on life for his career entirely. He wasn't in a very relevant position in 2004 before his injury, and he went on to have a fruitful run with WWE and other promotions for nearly 2 decades since. As for Lita, she turned out to be the one who may have, in retrospect, suffered the most. This isn't taking away from her position in the entire thing, but she played a role that was very much secondary to both men. And she did get to elevate herself at some point in the women's division, but that women's division isn't what it is now. She served a purpose in laying down the foundation for women's wrestling, but maybe didn't get to appreciate it while she was doing it. And even her retirement, where she was basically shamed by Crime Time with all these suggestive jokes and personal belongings, it was kind of disgraceful in retrospect, depending on who you talk to. None of the three had fun maybe taking on the idea, but they embraced it. Edge and Lita have gone on the record several times stating how uncomfortable the entire situation made them, but at the time, the only thing they could do was make the most of it. On a personal level, though, it seems like they all did come out of it better people, growing from it. Obviously, the close friendship they had was different, but Edge and Matt Hardy would go on to reconcile and move on, and Lita would move on as well. They all entered different relationships in their real life and have grown as professionals in the ring. Whether you think WWE was in the right or not for wanting to cash in on a real-life love triangle, Hardy has gone on to marry wrestling personality Rebby Sky. Edge would marry fellow WWE Hall of Famer Beth Phoenix. Lita has been active with WWE on and off for several years and was inducted in the WWE Hall of Fame, rightfully I might add, in 2014. One thing is clear, that 3-month-long storyline went on to have a massive impact on 3 different careers, and all 3 three of them, in one way or another, benefited from it. Thanks for watching Sportskeeda Wrestling. Let us know what you think of this storyline, and what other personal, emotional storylines do you remember in pro wrestling?